Later this morning, Clearwater police are still investigating the death of wrestling icon Hulk Hogan. 71-year-old Terry Bollea died on July 24th at a Clearwater hospital.
For decades, fans believed they knew everything about Hulk Hogan. The glory, the scandals, the rise, and the downfall. But few ever imagined that behind the towering gates of his Clearwater, Florida mansion, a darker and more complex story was quietly waiting to be discovered. The home itself is a fortress of fame, built during the peak of Hogan's superstardom, a symbol of his dominance both inside and outside the wrestling ring. From the outside, it looks like any other luxurious celebrity estate. Palm trees swaying, marble driveways gleaming, and the golden H emblem carved into the gates. But those who've been close to the property say that stepping inside feels less like entering a home and more like crossing into a secret museum of the 1980s. Walls covered in gold records, championship belts, and rare memorabilia from an era defined by excess. Yet amid the trophies and neon lights, there's an atmosphere of unease, something that doesn't quite belong. Former staffers have whispered about restricted zones, rooms that only Hogan himself entered, and strange late-night visitors who arrived in black SUVs with tinted windows. For years, rumors circulated among fans and former colleagues about what might be hidden inside those walls. Some said it was just business documents and old footage. Others claimed it was something much deeper. Records and tapes from wrestling's wildest days when the line between showmanship and secrecy blurred. Then came the day everything changed. Quietly, without media fanfare, federal agents began to take interest in Hogan's private estate. Neighbors later recalled seeing unfamiliar vehicles parked outside for hours at a time, and a strange tension that hung in the air. By the time the official vans arrived, it was too late to hide anything. The FBI wasn't there for nostalgia. They were there for evidence. Something inside Hogan's house had triggered a full-scale investigation. Something so serious that agents were reportedly ordered to seal parts of the mansion and restrict access to anyone, including Hogan himself. And that's where the mystery begins. What could possibly be inside the home of a wrestling legend that would attract the attention of federal authorities? Why were entire rooms off-limits, even to his closest associates? And what happened to the evidence once it left the property? In the months that followed, every attempt to uncover the truth was met with silence, sealed reports, and a statement that raised even more questions. No public information is available at this time. Some say the operation was connected to an ongoing case involving missing media assets and blackmail footage. Others claim it was about tax discrepancies or offshore accounts. But those who know Hogan best insist the story goes far beyond money. It reaches into the very core of entertainment history, the politics of fame, and the secrets that powerful men fought to bury. Whatever the truth may be, the story of Hulk Hogan's house is not just about wealth or nostalgia. It's about what happens when the legends we worship have secrets the world isn't ready to see. It was an early morning in Clearwater when everything changed for Hulk Hogan. The Florida sun had barely risen, casting long golden streaks across the calm waterfront, when neighbors noticed several black SUVs quietly rolling down the street toward the legendary wrestler's mansion. There were no flashing lights, no sirens, no spectacle, just men in suits, badges clipped discreetly to their belts, moving with purpose. At first, many thought it was just another production crew or security detail. After all, Hogan's home had seen its share of high-profile visitors over the years. But this was different. These weren't camera crews or promoters. They were federal agents. Within minutes, the gates were opened, and the vehicles slid inside. The air outside grew heavy with tension. Witnesses say Hogan appeared in his driveway, visibly confused, speaking with the agents as they presented sealed documents, warrants that allowed them to enter every inch of the mansion. What followed was a scene that left even longtime neighbors stunned. Agents began setting up equipment, taking photographs, and marking rooms with evidence tags. They weren't after fan mail or collectibles. They were searching for something specific, something they believed was hidden in the private sections of Hogan's home. A team was assigned to the West Wing, while others descended toward the basement and the private office Hogan kept locked most of the time. They brought out boxes, drives, and unmarked folders. Hogan reportedly protested, claiming everything in that house was personal property. But once the search began, there was no stopping it. The operation lasted hours. Agents combed through trophies, opened safes, even scanned the walls for hidden compartments. The wrestling icon watched helplessly as decades of his life were turned upside down. By mid-afternoon, evidence bags lined the marble floor, some labeled, others sealed with red tape marked classified. Then came the moment that changed everything. One of the agents called for backup after locating a concealed panel behind a painting in Hogan's study. Inside was a small door leading to what appeared to be a secret storage area, something that hadn't been listed on any blueprint of the property. Hogan's expression reportedly shifted from confusion to dread. "That's not supposed to be open," he muttered. Whatever they found inside that hidden room was serious enough to bring in additional personnel. By evening, the mansion was swarming with officials. The area was declared temporarily restricted, and even Hogan's security team was told to step back. As night fell, trucks began leaving the property loaded with sealed containers, escorted by unmarked cars. No one knew what they contained, but witnesses say the agents treated them with the same care reserved for high-level evidence. The next morning, news crews had already gathered outside, but officials refused to give statements. All they said was that the investigation was ongoing and related to sensitive material. Hogan himself retreated from the public eye that night, shutting down communications and canceling appearances. Something inside his home had triggered one of the most secretive operations in celebrity history. And the public was left wondering, what exactly had the FBI found behind those walls? Was it money? Evidence? Or something that could shake more than just the wrestling world? Few rooms in Hulk Hogan's mansion carried as much history or mystery as his private trophy room. This was the heart of his empire, a shrine to decades of fame and dominance. Every inch of it screamed success. Walls lined with championship belts, framed posters from WrestleMania, autographed photos from presidents and rock stars, even the tattered red and yellow bandana he wore in his earliest matches. But what most people didn't know was that this room was more than just a gallery. It was a vault of memories and, as investigators would soon learn, a repository of secrets that spanned generations of wrestling and entertainment history. When the agents entered the trophy room that day, they expected memorabilia. What they found instead made them pause. One agent later described the space as half museum, half archive, with items cataloged in strange, coded systems. In the corner, behind glass, stood an old wooden chest with a lock so rusted it had clearly not been opened in years. Beside it, stacks of VHS tapes labeled with names, some of them instantly recognizable to anyone in the industry, caught their attention. But these weren't recordings of wrestling matches. Many bore handwritten titles, simple and cryptic. Vegas 92, Sting, Meeting, Carter, Room 14. The handwriting was Hogan's. When the agents removed the tapes for analysis, they found that several had been meticulously rewound, suggesting they'd been viewed recently. A separate set of binders contained pages of personal notes, lists of dates, amounts, and what looked like meeting summaries. There were also photos, grainy Polaroid-style images showing wrestlers and promoters in private settings that didn't match any known public appearances. As the team continued, they discovered something even more unusual. A portion of the far wall, covered in framed magazine covers, didn't sound solid when tapped. Beneath those frames, investigators uncovered a false panel, leading to a narrow crawl space. Inside was a metal safe, coated in dust. Hogan, standing nearby, looked visibly tense when the agents wheeled it out. He reportedly muttered, "You don't need to open that." But they did. What was inside sent the room into silence. Inside the safe were personal journals, handwritten by Hogan over decades, documenting private deals, unpublicized payoffs, and backroom discussions that involved not just wrestlers, but television producers, promoters, and figures from the music industry. Some entries described arrangements to suppress footage, alter match outcomes, or silence potential scandals. The pages also included cryptic references to footage vaults, private reels, and secured storage. Each reference pointed deeper into the house, toward a place only Hogan and a handful of confidants knew existed: the hidden basement vault. The agents sealed off the room and photographed every inch. They knew they'd just uncovered the first piece of something much larger, a trail that could lead beyond wrestling and into the world of entertainment power politics. As they logged the evidence, Hogan stood quietly, eyes fixed on the wall, as if realizing that the life he'd built around fame and control was finally collapsing from within. That trophy room, once a monument to his glory, had become the scene of one of the most intriguing discoveries in celebrity history. But it was what lay beneath the house, behind steel and concrete, that would truly shock them all. Beneath Hulk Hogan's luxurious mansion lay something that even most of his closest friends didn't know existed: a fortified basement vault that seemed to belong more to a high-security institution than a celebrity home. The elevator that led down to it was hidden behind a mirrored panel in Hogan's private office, accessible only with a special code and fingerprint scan. The system, installed in the early 2000s, was rumored to have cost more than some homes in Clearwater itself. Hogan once joked on camera that it was "where the Hulkamania treasure's buried, brother," but no one realized how close he might have been to telling the truth. When agents discovered the hidden access point, Hogan immediately tensed. He reportedly tried to explain that the vault was for personal memorabilia and family items, but the agents insisted on inspecting it. As the elevator descended, the air grew cooler, the lighting dimmer until they reached a reinforced steel door with a biometric lock. What awaited inside was far beyond simple keepsakes. The room was lined with fireproof cabinets, safes, and storage containers, each labeled with handwritten tags. Some read 1985 tour docs, others bore initials and years. One safe was so large, it required industrial tools to open. The agents began cataloging the contents. Thousands of pages of legal documents, old financial ledgers, rare collectibles, and then things that raised far more questions than answers. Among them were sealed envelopes marked "confidential," containing photographs of private meetings between public figures, including athletes, record executives, and politicians. Some of these meetings, dated in the late 80s and early 90s, were connected to financial dealings involving offshore accounts and sponsorship funds. What stunned the agents even more was a stack of black binders containing typed memos that referenced media management, controlled footage, and contingency storage units. The deeper they dug, the stranger it became. One of the smaller safes contained a metallic box with the letters 1989 etched on top, a detail that matched a mysterious reference found earlier in Hogan's handwritten journal upstairs. Inside the box were rolls of undeveloped film, labeled with coded numbers, and a set of photographs showing individuals whose identities were partially obscured. When one of the agents opened a folder from the same box, they found pages describing unreported incidents during wrestling tours, injuries, cover-ups, and personal disputes that had never made it to the press. But it didn't stop there. Another container held a mix of hard drives and floppy disks, each encrypted and labeled with strange titles such as Project Titan, Media Reels AF, and HL Archives. Investigators quickly realized this was not a simple memorabilia vault. It was a controlled archive. Whatever was stored here was meant to be protected, hidden, and possibly used as leverage. Hogan reportedly grew agitated as the inspection continued. "That stuff isn't for anyone else," he said, pacing the floor as agents carried boxes up the elevator. "That's personal history, my history." But to law enforcement, it was now evidence. By the time the vault was cleared, over 20 containers had been sealed and logged. The agents left without commenting, but their faces said everything. What they had found wasn't just about Hulk Hogan. It connected to something much bigger, something that the entertainment world, and perhaps even the FBI, wasn't ready for the public to see. When investigators began reviewing the materials recovered from Hulk Hogan's basement vault, one category immediately drew their attention: the tapes. There were hundreds of them, some stacked neatly in old plastic crates, others bundled together with rubber bands. Most were VHS, but others were smaller digital reels, clearly more recent. Each tape had a label, some handwritten in Hogan's distinct block lettering, others typed as if part of a larger catalog. Titles like Tokyo 1987, Private Session, and Untitled Footage, Restricted, stood out, but there were also coded markings such as T4M, Matrix B, and HH Arch. At first glance, it appeared to be a massive personal archive, possibly a collection of Hogan's past matches and behind-the-scenes footage. But as forensic analysts began digitizing and examining the contents, it became evident these weren't wrestling replays or highlight reels. The first batch of tapes showed private meetings between major entertainment figures, many of whom had long since disappeared from the spotlight. There were discussions about financial arrangements, image, control, and sponsorship deals that seemed to border on manipulation. Other tapes depicted closed-door conversations between promoters and network executives, captured without their knowledge. One federal source later described the contents as career-ending material. The footage wasn't only about business. Some reels captured personal moments, celebrities at private gatherings, arguments between high-profile personalities, and incidents that hinted at misconduct, all recorded during the height of the 1980s entertainment boom. The deeper the analysts went, the more disturbing it became. There were references to insurance footage, clips that appeared to have been intentionally preserved for leverage. One tape contained a handwritten note attached, "Keep secure. Never release." As investigators examined the timestamps and backgrounds, they realized many of the recordings were made in hotel suites, backstage areas, and locker rooms. Hogan appeared in several of them, often smiling, often hosting, but not always aware of the camera. It raised one chilling possibility: was he the archivist or another victim of the recordings himself? What unsettled authorities most wasn't the footage itself, but the people featured within it. Among the faces were individuals connected to ongoing investigations in media corruption, sports management, and even organized crime. The FBI quickly sealed many of the tapes and issued internal orders forbidding discussion outside classified channels. Those who worked on the case later said it became less about Hogan and more about containment, keeping what was found from ever reaching the public. Rumors suggest that one particular set of tapes, marked HH Reel 12, showed something that could have redefined the public's understanding of how deep the influence of money and manipulation ran through the wrestling and entertainment industries. Within days of discovery, the footage was relocated to an undisclosed federal storage facility. Hogan himself was questioned for hours but never charged. He was told only that certain materials posed a national interest concern. The star reportedly looked confused and shaken, asking, "What does that even mean?" Whatever those tapes revealed, the answers never left that investigation room. The world only knows they existed, were seized, and sealed, forever changing how those inside the industry viewed one of its biggest icons. By the time the operation inside Hulk Hogan's mansion ended, the once vibrant home that had echoed with laughter, cameras, and celebrity visits now stood eerily silent. The marble floors were scuffed by the boots of federal agents, the air thick with the faint hum of electronics, and the metallic click of evidence boxes being sealed. Neighbors who peeked through their blinds said it looked less like a celebrity residence and more like a crime scene. Hours earlier, the vault had been opened, the trophy room stripped of its secrets, and the FBI's focus had shifted from exploration to extraction. Teams began labeling containers, photographing contents, and documenting every move. Some boxes were marked financial records, others simply footage. A few were sealed with red warning tape, the kind reserved for material deemed too sensitive for standard evidence storage. Witnesses later recalled seeing at least 4 trucks, 2 black, 2 white, rolling out of the property in silence, escorted by unmarked vehicles. What they carried remains one of the most tightly kept secrets in entertainment history. Sources close to the investigation claimed that agents removed over 40 physical boxes, along with several encrypted drives and multiple hardbound ledgers. But what shocked those who witnessed the removal wasn't the quantity. It was the urgency. One neighbor, a retired law enforcement officer, said, "They were moving like it was something bigger than a celebrity case. They were protecting something." Word spread quickly through Clearwater, and by dawn, news vans lined the streets. Reporters shouted questions, flashing cameras at the gate, but officials offered no comment. Hogan's legal team released a short statement saying the search was related to personal property misunderstandings and routine record clarifications. But no one believed that. The presence of high-ranking agents, classified labels, and forensic technicians told a different story. Insiders later revealed that one of the seized hard drives was flagged by the FBI's cyber unit within hours of being processed. Whatever was on it required immediate encryption and federal transport. Rumors circulated that the drive contained archived footage from the tapes, as well as scanned documents naming individuals linked to offshore entities and private media holdings. Within days, whispers began spreading through the entertainment industry. Executives canceling meetings, lawyers making late-night calls, and publicists scrambling to prepare statements just in case. The sense of panic was palpable. Even Hogan's closest friends began distancing themselves. One former associate claimed Hogan called him that night, his voice shaking, saying, "Brother, they weren't supposed to find that stuff." The question everyone began asking was simple. What did the FBI take that could make even one of wrestling's most powerful figures look frightened? Some believe the agents confiscated evidence tied to old entertainment blackmail networks. Others think it was something deeper, possibly linked to private surveillance recordings from decades past. Whatever it was, it prompted an unusual move. 2 weeks of continuous monitoring of the property even after the search ended. The mansion's security feeds were taken offline, and all maintenance workers were banned from entering. For Hogan, it marked the beginning of his silence. For the FBI, it marked the start of an operation cloaked in absolute secrecy. And for the rest of the world, it left one haunting question. What exactly left that house under those black tarps? And why was it so important that no one, not even Hulk Hogan himself, would ever see it again? In the weeks following the FBI raid, Hulk Hogan, one of the most outspoken and charismatic figures in sports entertainment, fell completely silent. For a man who had spent decades commanding microphones, delivering catchphrases, and captivating arenas, his sudden disappearance was almost eerie. The larger-than-life personality that once filled stadiums now avoided cameras, interviews, and fans. His Clearwater mansion, once a symbol of power and success, became a fortress of isolation. The blinds stayed drawn, deliveries were refused, and his trademark vehicles, the yellow Dodge Viper and red pickup, vanished from the driveway. People close to Hogan said he was not himself. One friend described him as paranoid, constantly pacing and making calls at odd hours. Another said he believed his phone was tapped and that his home security system had been compromised. He wasn't the Hulk anymore, one insider revealed. He was Terry, the real man behind the character, and he was scared. Within days, Hogan's team began erasing traces of his recent activities. His social media accounts were wiped of new posts. His podcast, which had been scheduled to feature celebrity guests, went on an indefinite hiatus. All public appearances were canceled with no explanation. Even his fan club website posted a single cryptic message. Hulkamania will return soon. Believe that. But it never did. Behind closed doors, Hogan's lawyers were meeting with federal representatives, negotiating access to personal belongings that had been confiscated during the raid. The FBI was tight-lipped, refusing to release details of what had been taken or why. Hogan was advised not to speak publicly, but those who saw him described a man consumed by anxiety. He kept saying, "They don't want this out," one confidant shared. He didn't say what this was, but you could tell it was something heavy, something that could change everything. Weeks turned into months, and Hogan's silence became headline material. Tabloids speculated that the investigation involved illegal recordings or hidden financial schemes. Others claimed it was tied to an old Hollywood dispute buried decades ago. But the most haunting rumors suggested that Hogan possessed evidence connecting powerful figures in both the wrestling and entertainment industries, evidence that could destroy reputations and expose buried alliances. When Hogan finally appeared in public months later, it wasn't the triumphant return fans expected. He looked thinner, quieter, and uncharacteristically restrained. Reporters shouted questions, but he said nothing, only offering a brief nod and a faint smile before entering his car. Later that evening, during a charity appearance, a fan shouted from the crowd, asking if the rumors about the FBI were true. Hogan paused for a moment, smiled faintly, and said just one line, "Some things are better left unseen, brother." The crowd laughed, assuming it was one of his famous one-liners, but those who knew him could see the fear behind his eyes. That single sentence was his only public comment about the entire ordeal. Afterward, he disappeared again, leaving the world to wonder what truth he was hiding, and who exactly didn't want it revealed. In a career built on spectacle, Hogan had faced countless scripted battles, but this time, the fight wasn't inside a ring. It was in the shadows, against something even Hulk Hogan couldn't overpower. Months after the raid faded from headlines, a series of blurry, anonymous photos appeared online, and with them, the silence surrounding Hulk Hogan's mansion cracked open again. The images first surfaced on an obscure internet forum late one night, posted under a username that vanished within hours. They were grainy, low resolution, and appeared to have been taken during the FBI search. The first photo showed a large room covered in dust sheets, with walls lined in red velvet and glass cases cracked open. But it was the second image that captured global attention. A dimly lit space showing stacks of boxes, a metal chest with the words "Lockdown Archive" painted across its surface, and what looked like official evidence tags marked "Property of U.S. Government." Within hours, the pictures spread across social media. Some dismissed them as fakes, others swore they were real, pointing out the unmistakable gold trim of Hogan's Clearwater home. Investigators refused to comment, but insiders quietly confirmed the layout matched his basement vault. One of the leaked photos also showed something chilling: a wall plastered with newspaper clippings and handwritten notes connecting entertainers, promoters, and politicians in a spiderweb of red string and annotations. It looked less like fan memorabilia and more like an investigative map, suggesting Hogan had been tracking relationships and secrets long before the raid. Another photo revealed a single object sitting on a steel table, an old handheld camcorder labeled "Master Copy." Experts analyzing the image claimed it matched models used in the early 1990s, the same period tied to the tapes reportedly seized from the vault. As debates exploded online, several of the photos were mysteriously removed, replaced with warnings about federal data violations. Even major entertainment news outlets avoided discussing them, hinting they'd been advised not to. Those who managed to download the originals before deletion noticed something else: a faint watermark in the bottom corner of one image, a set of initials that didn't match any FBI division. Speculation spread that the leak came from inside the operation itself, someone disturbed by what they'd seen and determined to let the world catch a glimpse. Hogan, meanwhile, issued no denial and made no statement. His attorney only said, "We don't comment on digitally fabricated material." But the silence spoke volumes. If the photos were fake, why were they being removed under federal notice? And if they were real, what else had been photographed that night, and buried for good reason? Years have passed since the FBI entered Hulk Hogan's mansion, yet no official explanation has ever surfaced. What was taken remains sealed, locked away in classified archives, unreachable to the public and untouched by journalists. Those who once worked on the case have retired or gone silent, citing non-disclosure agreements. A few have hinted anonymously that what was found wasn't meant for anyone's eyes, while others warned that the materials seized could change the perception of multiple industries. Hogan has since sold the Clearwater estate, moving to a smaller, more private property on the outskirts of Tampa. The new owners reportedly sealed off the basement completely, converting the area into a solid foundation slab. Contractors claim they weren't allowed to remove certain structural sections by federal order. Every few years, the rumors resurface, whispers of a classified archive labeled Hogan, Case 2016, stored deep in federal evidence facilities. Some believe the tapes were destroyed. Others insist they're preserved under national security grounds. What could possibly link a professional wrestler to something that warranted such secrecy? Theories abound: illegal recordings, celebrity blackmail, corporate espionage. But no proof has ever emerged. Meanwhile, Hogan remains uncharacteristically reserved, rarely addressing his past beyond vague reflections about trust and betrayal. Friends say he still has nightmares about that day, about the sound of the safes being cracked open and the echo of boots across his marble floor. The legend of Hulk Hogan was built on power, fame, and control. But behind the persona, there may have been a man guarding secrets too heavy for even him to carry. Whatever truth lies inside those sealed boxes may never be known. And maybe that's the point. Some stories are buried not to protect the guilty, but to protect the world from what it would do if the truth ever got out.